Welcome to Business Coach University, our very first monthly workshop. Excited to be here, excited to kickstart this. Look, I know this is a smaller group right now. We have not started to really push enrollments in this. We're still building out some of the assets in the classroom. So right now, you guys that are here today, you are the first adopters. You are the early adopters, and I thank you so very much for that. Today, we're going to be going through Industry Navigator. You see it on the screen there, and I'm going to try and make this as painless as possible, but here's the real story of this. This is the first time we're using the school webinar feature. So if there are any glitches, we apologize in advance. As we get more reps and as we get more at bats in this, we will fine tune it, get the process down, and we will make sure that we continue to refine this process. But welcome once again to the Business Coach University monthly workshop. This is our deep dive for the month. And today we're going inside Industry Navigator, but not in the way you've seen it in the classroom. And I want to remind everybody the classroom right now is still being populated with the recorded training sessions. Currently, what's available inside the classroom is the text lesson, the discussion prompt, and of course, the diagnostic worksheets in the BCU free level, as well as the templates. For example, Industry Navigator, there's template 1.1 through 1.7, right? So you have the lesson text, you have the discussion prompts, and you have the actual assets that you're going to work through. Coming right behind all of those things will be the recorded trainings with a presentation much like this, but specific for each one of the tools and the resources. What we're doing today is going to go deeper into that. It's going to frame what the 7 templates and Industry Navigator do together. So we're going to go ahead and get started, but I wanted to remind you right now, you may not see video lessons in some of the templates because we're coming around after we loaded everything up with the text, discussion prompts, and the assets. We're now going back and recording going forward. So just a little housekeeping there. Good afternoon. My name is Craig Laughlin Jr. My wife is in the chat, Jessica, and we are here to serve. We're grateful to serve. We own Laughlin Business Advisors together. We are a small to mid-sized business coaching practice. We also come from a background of digital marketing and, of course, sales. So we work the gamut here in terms of helping small and medium-sized businesses turn more of their existing revenue into profits. One thing we recognized was that in our years of doing this, we recognized that there wasn't exactly an operating system to install, whether you were trying to build a coaching practice on your own, whether you went down the franchise model or a licensing model like we offer. There was no real operating system that you can install. For example, right, business coaches want to pursue a particular niche because they're passionate about it. They've got experience in it, but there's really been no training or operating system to install around whether or not that was a fantasy niche, right? Was there an appetite to solve the problems that niche was experiencing? And was there a capacity to pay for fixing it, right? So we found over the years that lacking an operating system was keeping a lot of people from excelling as business coaches. And that's effectively what Business Coach University is and what we've layered in here with Business Coach Operating System. So today I want to show you what I'm actually seeing when coaches come through this particular step. This is Industry Navigator. So today I want to talk about what I'm seeing, and I have conversations with new coaches, prospective coaches, existing coaches every week, every single day. And so these are the patterns, these are the mistakes that I see as it relates to step 1, Industry Navigator. The moments where everything clicks or where everything stalls, because there's a real difference between knowing the framework and watching it play out in real life. And I think that difference is where the real learning happens. So here's what you're going to walk away with today. 3 patterns that keep coaches invisible. And that's the way I want to say it, because if you're not seen, if you're not heard, you're effectively invisible, right? And 1 integrated decision that changes everything downstream. You notice we have steps 1 through 9. What we do today, what we do in Industry Navigator has an impact downstream. And I want to show you what that looks like. So whether you're brand new and still figuring out where to start, or you're deep in the templates grinding through your validation interviews, this session is designed to meet you where you are. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Before we dive in, I want to set expectations so you know exactly what you're getting from me in the next 45 minutes. Number one, 3 patterns, right? You're going to get 3 patterns I keep seeing in the field that keep coaches invisible. And I'm not talking about theoretical patterns from a textbook. These are things I'm watching happening right now in real time, and with real coaches that I speak to every single week. And by the end of today, you'll be able to diagnose whether you're in one of these patterns. And more importantly, you're going to understand why it's happening, right? That's a big deal. So, number 2, my own story, because I'd be a hypocrite if I stood up here and talked about making mistakes, or mistakes that coaches make, rather, without acknowledging and admitting that I've made every single one of them. So I'm going to raise my hand on some of these, and I think that honesty is going to help you see the patterns more clearly. And number 3, the integration piece. Now, the classroom here inside school teaches each template individually. So today I'm going to show you how all 7 kind of work as one connected decision. And this is the piece that's impossible to capture in one of the 12-minute sessions that I'll be layering into each of the template sessions. So that's a really big deal. How is it all interconnected? Because this is an ecosystem, right? And so I want to teach you how it's all captured together instead of just in the individualized template sessions. And number 4, you're going to leave with a specific next step based on where you are inside of our school ecosystem, right? We have several different tiers. We have our standard tier, which is free to everybody forever. We have our premium tier, which gets a little bit deeper. And then we have our VIP tier, which gets you more proximity and access directly to myself and Jessica. So those are the 4 things. That's the promise. So now let's get into it, right? Let's deliver it. I want to pause before we get into the patterns because I think it's important you hear something from me first. Again, I'm not standing up here as someone who figured this out all in one try, right? Or on my first try, or on my second try, or even my third try. I'm standing here as someone who made every one of the mistakes I'm about to describe. All of them. Every single one. And some of them cost me years, not just months, not just days, but years. So before I built Business Coach Operating System, before I understood what a validated niche even meant, but before I even understood what a validated niche even meant, I was running a digital marketing agency in St. Petersburg, Florida. It was a full HubSpot partner agency. I had a full team. I had 2 developers, 2 SEOs, content writer, content strategist, photographers, social media, graphic design. I had interns. I had a 3,000 square foot office above a restaurant in downtown St. Pete on Central Avenue. I had everything. We were nominated for St. Petersburg Good Burger Awards, right? Which was a business that supported and sewed into our community. And it's the classic case. On the outside, everything looked like it was working. But here's what was actually happening. I was the lowest paid person on my leadership team. And that was by design, I'll be honest. That was by design because I honor and celebrate my employees. And what I noticed was, well, actually I didn't notice. What was happening was I was constantly giving away free advice, business advice to my marketing clients, and I wasn't charging for it. I was getting paid only for my digital marketing services. I wasn't getting compensated for the advice I was giving. But what was happening there? I was also creating time capacity for myself, right? Because I was allocating a lot of my time to these business owners for things that they weren't paying for. And it was creating a cash flow issue in the business because I wasn't able to develop more business, but then also at home because I was the lowest paid person by design, but also I wasn't earning cash flow in my business to give myself a raise, right? So there was all this stuff that was going on, and I don't regret a minute of it because I always want to serve and put my best foot forward, but it came at a price, right? And it came without me recognizing my true value as somebody that somebody sought for advice. And so I was working hard to keep the business running, but I was missing everything that actually mattered at home because I was putting additional pressure on me. So what I would do is I would go to work, give everything to my clients, to my employees, to my community. Then I'd come home, give the obligatory wave to my family. And then I'd go to my home office and I'd continue to work inside of my home office, right? Putting out fires, answering emails, setting up proposals, and so on. So I was home, I was present, but this is the part that matters. I wasn't present, right? And I don't know if anybody else is here. Give a thumbs up in the chat, give a heart, whatever, a fire emoji. But if that's you, go ahead and acknowledge that because that's a big deal. So I remember very specifically one time My second oldest, I was married and had 5 stepdaughters at the time. And my second oldest stepdaughter, Lydia, very much like me, athletic, into sports, reminded me of me as a kid. And one evening after I'd come home and gone back to my home office, she came into my office door and knocked and said, "Hey, can we go outside and bump the volleyball?" And of course, I did everything that every hustling business owner says. I was like, absolutely. Just give me one more hour and I'll be down. Well, she gave me this smile. And at the time, I didn't recognize the smile, but I understand it now. But it was a smile of a 14-year-old girl who had learned to not expect me to show up. She wanted to be polite. So she smiled, said, okay, turned around and walked away. But she already knew. She already knew. So you already know. And raise your hand if this is you as well. But 1 hour turned into 3, 3 hours turned into 5. I missed dinner. The sun went down. I didn't even think about the volleyball, right? And it certainly never got touched. So something happened that night, and I just constantly kept playing that smile that she gave me as she walked out of my office over and over and over, right? The smile, the turning away, the knowing he's not going to show up, right? And it was in that moment that I recognized the absolute letdown I had created. I was doing all of this work and I was hustling and working so hard for my family while it was keeping me from my family. And here's the kicker. I'm not unique in the world to this, right? Business owner clients that you are going to serve in your practice are having their own volleyball moment. It's a fact. You may be having your own volleyball moment in your coaching practice. It is a fact. So it's not a unique situation to me, right? We always think that it feels unique to me, but it's not unique to the world, right? And I want you to write that down. I want you to remember that. So what that realization is, when I realized what was going on there, it's why Business Coach University exists, right? It's why Business Coach Operating System exists. It's because I'm in this room right now because of this, not because I figured it all out, but because I failed in a way that I refuse to let other people repeat. Does that make sense? I failed so you don't have to. And so when I finally decided to make the shift into coaching, take what I had been giving away for free and build a real practice around it, I made the exact same niche mistakes I'm about to show you, which is why I can describe them in such detail, because I lived them, right? So here's what nobody is going to tell you about becoming a coach. Most of us don't plan it. We stumble into it. I had an accidental epiphany moment. So I was running the agency, and the entire time I was running it, I was giving away free advice, right? And clients would come to me and ask me their business questions, talk to me about their business problems, not their marketing problems, but they were talking to me about cash flow issues, hiring and firing, strategic direction. And I'd help them every single time, and I'd help them for free. And I remember one time I was helping this gentleman, Josh, and he had a spreadsheet issue, and I'm not an Excel expert whatsoever. But I knew enough. And so I said, let me take a look at this. And ultimately I did. I figured it out. And he said, man, thanks, Craig. You saved my ass. Pardon my language. That's what he said. I'm quoting. And I joked around and jokingly I said, awesome. Well, that'll be $500. And not jokingly, he said, cool. Can you invoice me? And it was in that moment, that accidental epiphany moment, that I realized people were already coming to me for business advice. They already valued it. And if I had just asked, they would have gladly paid me for it. Maybe some of you are in here right now. You're the one everybody comes to when they have a business question, and you just haven't figured out a formal way to ask for cash for your advice, right? So this is what I want to walk through with Business Coach Operating System. I want to help plug those gaps. So Michael Gerber wrote something in the E-Myth. If you haven't read that, pick that up. But E-Myth Revisited, that captures this perfectly. He said, the fatal assumption is that if you understand the technical work of a business, you understand a business that does that technical work. And that's exactly what happened to me. I understood how to help business owners. I just had no idea how to build a business around that help. So when I made the shift into coaching, I did what every coach does. I went broad. I help business owners grow their companies. I turn more revenue into profits, right? Sound familiar? Anybody raise their hand? Sound familiar? I'm raising my hand right now because I was pattern number 1 before I even knew it had a name. So let me show you the numbers that should make every person in this room right now sit up a little straighter. And that was not by design, shifting in my chair, but I did just sit up a little bit straighter in my chair. $20 billion industry. That's what we're in. A $20 billion industry. 72,000 business coaching companies in the United States alone, not globally, here in the United States alone. And the average income for a business coach under $75,000 a year. EF reports coaches are averaging 12.4 active clients per coach and 11.6 hours per week actually spent coaching, right? So you've got this massive market of business owners, $20 billion industry, this massive market of business owners who desperately need help. Tens of thousands of coaches who are genuinely good at helping people. And somehow those two things are not converging, right? They're not connecting at the level they should be. Seth Godin, you probably know Seth Godin, said it as simply as anyone ever has. Everyone is not your customer. And yet that's exactly how most coaches position themselves. They try to serve everyone, which means they resonate with who? No one. And the question I keep coming back to, the one that drives everything we do inside the BCOS system, is why? Why is that gap that wide? Why are talented, experienced people struggling to build a sustainable practice in a market that is actively looking for them? And the answer almost every single time starts right here in step one. It starts with the niche decision. And most coaches are getting it wrong in ways they don't even understand, they can't even see until somebody shows them. So I'm going to show you. And if you take nothing else from this workshop, take this. Your niche decision determines the ceiling on everything else that comes after it. Your messaging, it's only as clear as your niche. Your offer, it's only as compelling as the specificity of the problem it solves. Your pricing, it's only as justifiable as the transformation you can articulate. And your pipeline, guess what? It's only going to fill when the right people recognize themselves in your positioning. So step one is not just another step. It is the foundation. The other 8 steps sit on it. And what I'm about to show you are the 3 patterns that keep that foundation from ever getting built. And I call them the 3 patterns that keep coaches invisible. And I'm going to sit in the pain with each one because I think that's where the real learning happens, not in the solution exactly, but in the deep understanding of the problem. So 3 patterns, and I want to be clear, these are not those outliers. These are the most common things I see when coaches come into the system and start working Industry Navigator. Each one of these feels rational when you're inside it. That's what makes them dangerous. They disguise themselves as wisdom, as preparation, right? As logic. But they're all different versions of the same thing, avoiding the discomfort of a real decision. So let's start with the one that does the most damage. I call it the safety pit. And I need to raise my hand here because this was me. When I transitioned from the agency into coaching, my positioning was I help business owners grow their companies. And that's what I led with. And it felt smart at the time because I genuinely could help a lot of different types of business owners. So I had the experience, I had the results. Why would I narrow it down, right? Safety pit. But here's what those statements actually are. They're fear statements disguised as strategy, right? When we say on one side, I don't want to limit myself, what it really means is I'm afraid to commit, right? Anybody else? What if I pick wrong means I don't have evidence yet and I'm not willing to go get it? Harsh, but it's true. I can help anyone means I haven't done the hard work to figure out who I specifically am uniquely positioned to serve. And I'll niche down later means I'm hoping that hustle and volume will somehow replace the clarity that I do not have. And I say this, guys, I say this as someone who has lived inside this pattern for months. The safety pick is the most seductive mistake in coaching because it protects you from the discomfort of specificity. And specificity is supposed to feel uncomfortable. That's how you know it's working. Now, I want to walk you through what the safety pick actually costs, not just theoretically, right? But in real months of someone's life. And I'm describing this timeline because I watched myself live parts of it. Month 1 feels great. You build the website, you're picking the colors, right? You write about the page, you get the headshots done. It feels productive. You're building the business. In month 2, you start posting content, LinkedIn posts, maybe some other social media. Engagement is low. You get a couple of likes from friends and you tell yourself you just need to be more consistent. So you keep posting. Month 3, you get 3 discovery calls, maybe through your network, maybe through outreach, but none of them convert. And here's what stings. You don't actually know why. Was it the offer? Was it your pricing? The conversation? You can't tell because the positioning is so broad that you're attracting people who were never a fit for you in the first place, and you have no way to diagnose it. Month 4, you decide the problem must be tactical, so you go buy a course on funnels or sales, and you build a lead magnet, but nobody downloads it because the messaging is too generic to trigger recognition in anybody specific. And then month 5, you start wondering if you need more credibility, another certification, maybe more letters after your name, right? In month 6, this is where it gets real and this is where it gets painful. Savings are shrinking. Your spouse or your partner, whoever's in your corner, they're asking uncomfortable questions. Hey, Craig, how's the business going? And you don't have a good answer. Every single one of those months was fixable before it started. If the niche decision had been made, if the positioning had been clear, you wouldn't have needed better sales skills because you would have had been talking to the right people. You wouldn't have needed a funnel course because your messaging would have attracted the qualified prospects. The safety pick doesn't just cost you clients, folks. It costs you time. And time is the one thing you can't get back. Alex Hormozi put this in a way that cuts right through the noise, right? He said, the more specific you can be about who you serve and what you do for them, the easier it is to charge premium prices. Specificity is what allows you to be the obvious choice. And I want you to look at what I'm calling the specificity ladder here, because this is where the economics becomes really undeniable. I help businesses. Well, that's probably worth about $100 an hour to the market, because at that level of vagueness, you're competing against every other coach, every other consultant, every YouTube video, every blog post. Your competition is infinite, which means your pricing power is near zero. I help service businesses grow revenue. That's better. You've narrowed the industry. Now, maybe it's worth $250 an hour because now you're at least signaling some domain knowledge, right? How about this one? I help HVAC companies build sales teams. Well, now we're getting somewhere. That's specific enough that an HVAC company owner reads it and thinks, well, this person understands my world. $500 an hour becomes justifiable because the specificity implies expertise. And now this one, I help HVAC owners escape founder-led sales in 90 days. That's the version that commands premium pricing because it names a specific buyer, a specific problem, a specific outcome, and a specific timeline. That HVAC owner who's doing all the selling themselves and can't figure out how to delegate it, they will gladly pay you $1,000 an hour for that solution. Gladly, because the specificity makes the value self-evident. And each level of specificity narrows the audience and increases the value. And that seems counterintuitive to every new coach or every coach that's struggling who thinks going broad keeps their options open. It doesn't. It keeps your income low. I want to pause and give you a question, and I need you to actually sit with it. Don't rush past this. Would you hire you? Would you hire you? And I'm serious. If you're a business owner right now, somebody running a company stuck at a plateau, somebody who knows they need help but doesn't know who to trust, and they came across your website or your LinkedIn or your content, would they hire you? Would they look at your positioning and say, that person understands my exact situation? Would they read your about page and think, I absolutely need to talk to this person right now? Or would they scroll past because what they saw looked like platitudes? They look like every other coach that they've already ignored. Now, I asked myself this question 3 years ago, and the honest answer was no. My positioning was so broad that a buyer with a real problem would have had no reason to believe I understood their specific situation. I was invisible, not because I lacked expertise, but because my positioning didn't give the market anything specific to latch onto. And that's what the safety pick produces: invisibility. Would you hire you? Pattern 2, the research rabbit hole. Anybody? This one is sneaky because it disguises procrastination as preparation. So here's what it looks like. A coach decides they're going to do their homework, right? In parentheses. They're going to do their homework on the niche before committing. Sounds responsible. Sounds like the smart play. So they pull up IBIS World reports, they research market size, they analyze competitor websites, they build spreadsheets tracking industry trends, they join Facebook groups in their target market and lurk around the groups, telling themselves they're observing buyer behavior. 3 weeks go by, sometimes 4, sometimes 6, and they feel like they've been working hard because they have. They have all this data. They can tell you the market size, they can name the top competitors, they can quote growth rates, but they have not had a single conversation with an actual human being who would potentially pay them for coaching. And that is the critical distinction here. Research tells you what the market looks like from the outside. Validation tells you what buyers actually experience from the inside. Research on this side tells you the industry is growing at 4.5% annually. Validation on this side tells you the specific words a frustrated founder uses at 2 a.m. when they're staring at a revenue plateau that they cannot. Peter Drucker said something decades ago that still cuts through all the noise here. The aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well the product or service fits him and sells itself. That's the standard, folks. Not know about the customer, know and understand. And you can't get that. You can't get there from a spreadsheet. You get there from having conversations. Here's what one real validation interview produces that 6 weeks of research will never touch. First, plain language. When you sit across from a buyer and ask them to describe their biggest frustration, they will use words you would never have invented on your own. SaaS founders not going to say what you think they'll say. I'm experiencing revenue challenge. They'll say, we hit $2 million and just stop. Every month is a grind just to stay flat. That exact phrasing becomes the foundation of everything you build in step 3. Second, failed solutions. Every buyer you talk to has already tried something. Maybe it's a consultant. Maybe they bought a course. Maybe it's an internal promotion they hoped would fix it. And those failed attempts, they're gold because they prove willingness to spend money on this problem and they reveal what doesn't work, which becomes your differentiation. Third, budget reality. You need to hear directly whether these buyers can pay premium rates. Now, the BCOS rules, it's explicit here. If prospects in your target market can't pay $500 an hour or $3,000 a month, the niche fails the viability test. Fourth, the referral signal. A strong interview that you have, a conversation, generates referrals. If someone is describing a painful problem and you're clearly understanding it deeply, they will say, hey, you should talk to my friend Joe. And if your interviews aren't generating referrals, guess what? That's data. And this is the rule that separates coaches who pick a niche from coaches who validate a niche. And it's non-negotiable inside the BCOS system. 5 real conversations with potential buyers before you commit to anything. Not friends telling you you have a great idea. They're going to say that no matter what because they love you and they want to be supportive. Not family being supportive for the same reasons, right? Not other coaches nodding along because they don't actually know your target market any better than you do. 5 conversations with human beings who match your target buyer profile and who would actually write you a check for coaching. And I know right now, I know coaches are going to ignore this. I know you're not going to do this. Some of you will, and you're going to win. Some of you won't. I know coaches right now who have spent 3 months building websites, creating content, running ads, and I've done this, and they have not had a single one of these conversations. They have invested thousands of dollars or more and hundreds of hours on a foundation they never tested with a real buyer. They built it on assumptions. And the coaches I see break through the fastest in this, they do the 5 conversations in their first 2 weeks. First 2 weeks, before the website, before the content, before any of it. Because those conversations tell them things that no amount of research is going to reveal. And those insights reshape everything that comes after. Everything is interconnected. Research is necessary. Template 1.3 exists for a reason. But research without validation is like studying the menu without ever tasting the food. You know it's available, you have no idea what's good. Pattern 3, and this is the one that catches experienced professionals off guard because it challenges something they've built their identity around, their resume. This is the resume fallacy, and it goes like this. I was VP of sales at a mid-market SaaS company for 15 years. I built teams, I closed enterprise deals. I know sales inside and out. So obviously, I should coach sales leaders. Now, on the surface, logic might seem bulletproof. Of course, you should coach in an area where you have deep expertise. Now, here's the problem. The problem isn't the expertise. The problem is the assumption that the expertise automatically translates into coaching authority in that same space. When you were VP of sales, your title carried weight. People on your team listened because you were their boss. Prospects took meetings because you represented a company with a brand, and your results were visible because the company tracked them. Now you're a coach. Nobody knows your name. The language might be different. In corporate, you said pipeline velocity, and everybody understood. In the coaching world, the buyers you're trying to reach might use completely different words. Your corporate results need to be reproven because a prospect doesn't care that you grew revenue at company X, right? They care whether you can help them grow revenue and, more importantly, profits at their company. Those are 2 very different credibility conversations. And this is why template 1.2, the authority transferability map, exists. It forces you to score your authority transfer honestly. And it's one of the most humbling experiences in the system for experienced professionals. It genuinely is a humbling experience. Jim Collins wrote in Good to Great about the hedgehog concept. It's not a goal to be the best. It's not a strategy to be the best. It's an understanding of what you can be the best at. And that distinction matters here because the authority gap isn't about becoming someone new. It's about understanding where your existing expertise transfers with the most credibility. The gap is closable. You can do it. Here's how I see coaches do it successfully. First, learn their language. Validation interviews give you the vocabulary that your target market uses. You stop speaking corporate and start speaking buyer. Template 1.4 is specifically designed to extract this. Second, build visible proof. Not proof for your former colleagues. I don't care about that. Proof for the market you're entering. Case studies from early engagements, even pro bono ones. Speaking at events where your target buyers gather, publishing content that addresses their specific challenges. Third, leverage network bridges. Almost every coach has someone in their existing network who can open a door for them. Those warm introductions transfer credibility faster than any content strategy because trust is transitive. Fourth, accept the timeline. 3 to 6 months of intentional work. That's the honest answer. The coaches who accept it and work it consistently, they're the ones who break through. The ones who expect overnight authority, they're the ones who quit. And I've seen it multiple times. All right, so we've sat in the pain. We've looked at 3 patterns that keep coaches invisible, and I raised my hand on each one because I told you I've lived each one of them. Now I want to shift and show you something that the classroom training, right, inside of each individual step doesn't do and can't do in the same way that we're going to do today. The classroom teaches each template individually, and that's on purpose. Template 1.1, here's how it works. Template 1.2, here's how it works. And that's necessary because each one has its own logic, right? Its own thinking prompts, its own quality checks. So it needs to be built out that way. But what the classroom doesn't show you is how all 7 templates function as one continuous decision, because that's what Industry Navigator actually is. It's not 7 separate exercises. It is one decision, one step made through 7 different lenses. So I want to take you through the flow, the way one output becomes the next input, the way a single insight in template 1 ripples all the way through to your positioning hypothesis in template 1.7. So here's the flow. 4 phases, 7 templates, but remember, it's one decision. Phase 1 is self-assessment, templates 1.1 and 1.2. You inventory everything you bring to the table, and then you score your authority transfer potential, right? You come out of this phase with 3 to 5 hypotheses ranked by authority strength, not one niche, 3 to 5 possibilities. Phase 2 is market research. Template 1.3, you take those hypotheses and validate that real demand exists. Some of you are going to skip over this. I'm telling you right now, it's a mistake. At 1.3, you take those hypotheses and validate that real demand exists. Competitors making money, pricing data, buyer access channels. You're gathering evidence, not picking yet. Phase 3 is the actual validation, and this is even more important than the market research. Templates 1.4 and 1.5, this is where the real uncomfortable work happens. You take your surviving hypotheses and have actual conversations with real buyers. This is so important. We've even built out an interview script, right? The interview script structures those conversations. You don't have to guess. The evidence log captures the findings. And what comes out is irreplaceable. I can't say this enough. Pain language for step 3. Budget confirmation for step 4, failed solutions that become your differentiation, and referral signals that tell you the niche is alive. And phase 4 is the decision, templates 1.6 and 1.7. The scoring matrix takes every data point from the first 3 phases and weights them. And then the positioning hypothesis build drafts your initial positioning for step 3. Nothing you do in 1 through 6 is wasted. Every template's output becomes the next template's input. And the final decision is not a guess anymore. It's an evidence-backed verdict built on real data from real conversations. Let me show you the other side, because I don't want anyone leaving today only feeling the weight of what goes wrong, right? I want you to see what it looks like when the decision is made well. Same coach, same expertise, Same certifications. The only thing that changed was the niche decision. I help SaaS founders escape founder-led sales. When a SaaS founder at 2 million in revenue reads that line, something clicks. They don't need it explained. They feel it immediately in their chest. That recognition, that instant, that's me, changes everything for you downstream. Content starts working because it speaks to a specific pain. Discovery calls convert because the person already identified with the positioning before they booked. Pricing makes sense because the transformation is clear. And by month 3, they have a pipeline. Not because they got better at sales, because the specificity of their positioning did the heavy lifting. Jay Abraham wrote about this beautifully. He said, if you truly want the best for the people you serve, you have to become the most trusted advisor they have. And trust comes from understanding their world better than they do. That understanding can't come from a generic positioning statement. It can only come from the depth of knowing you build through validation. This is important. One of the things that gets lost when we teach step 1 in isolation is how dramatically it affects everything that follows. So when your niche is clear and validated, step 2 becomes almost straightforward. You know exactly which buyer to study. Your avatar interviews are targeted. They're not fishing expeditions. Step 3 transforms because the pain language you captured in validation interviews becomes the raw material for your messaging system. You're not guessing what to say. You're echoing words that actual buyers use to describe actual problems. You get how valuable that is. Step 4, your offer architecture becomes coherent. You're designing an offer that solves a specific problem for a specific buyer at a price justified by clear transformation. In step 5, your coaching frameworks are grounded in the patterns you discovered during validation. And your revenue systems in step 6 finally works because your outreach speaks directly to a market that already recognizes you. The right people lean in, the wrong people move on. Every dollar you spend on marketing goes further because it's aimed at a bullseye. That's the compound effect, and it only exists when step 1 is done right. Let me give you 5 decision rules I enforce when coaching operators through step 1. And they exist in the templates, but hearing them in context changes how you apply them. Rule 1. If your market can't pay $500 an hour or $3,000 a month, it fails the viability test. I don't care how passionate you are. If the economic buyers don't have the budget for premium coaching, you're building a hobby, not a business. Rule 2, 5 real conversations before you commit. Not friends, not family, not other coaches, buyers. This rule exists because it is the single most effective filter in the entire operating system. Rule 3, if 100 coaches could use your positioning statement, you don't have positioning. I help leaders lead better is not positioning. I help manufacturing plant managers reduce turnover by implementing frontline leadership systems is positioning. Rule 4, authority below 60% requires a documented plan, not a hope. A plan with specific actions and timelines. And rule 5, this is the one that frees people. Your first commitment is not permanent. We're not permanently tattooing this on your forehead. You make the best decision with the evidence you have, and you plan to refine after 10 clients. Iteration is expected. Perfection is not requested. Hormozi said in a podcast once, replicate before you iterate, right? Iteration is expected, right? You're going to iterate when you have data. Simon Sinek wrote that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves that what you believe. Here's why I believe in step 1 so deeply. And I'm going to get back to being personal for a second. I built BCOS, Business Coach Operating System, out of scar tissue. The 9 steps, the 66 templates, they're not just an intellectual architecture. They're the lessons I learned from building businesses the wrong way, from losing everything that mattered because I was too busy hustling to see what was happening right in front of me. Step 1 matters to me because it's the clear first domino. When your positioning is clear, your marketing gets simpler. When your marketing gets simpler, your pipeline fills more predictably. When your pipeline fills predictably, you stop working nights and weekends chasing the next client. And when that happens, you get something back that no amount of revenue can buy. You get back to the dinner table with your family. That volleyball that was never touched, I can't go back and change that, but I can build a system that helps other business owners and coaches avoid making the same mistake. And that's what Business Coach Operating System is. And it starts right here. It starts in step one with a decision that most coaches skip or treat like a formality. So here's your move. I mentioned earlier we have 3 different levels here inside the community. And I'm going to give you something specific regardless of where you are, because I don't believe in workshops that end with good luck figuring it out. If you are at our standard level, your next step is the Industry Navigator diagnostic. Complete it. Score yourself honestly across the 5 dimensions that it goes through. And then post your score in the community, not just the total. There's a discussion prompt underneath where you get that template, the diagnostic. Comment, post it. Not just the total, but your weakest dimension and one thing you commit to work on. The act of documenting and declaring, that's the way we say it, backed by the Dominican University research on goal commitment, makes you significantly more likely to follow through. If you're at premium, you now have some more context that the recorded lessons won't have or that the lesson texts don't give you. Go back to the 7 templates and work them as a connected decision, not separate homework assignments, one continuous flow. And check yourself against the 3 patterns. Are you making the safety pick? Are you stuck in the research rabbit hole? Is the resume fallacy coloring your assumptions? And bring your 1.6 scoring results to the next group lab. And if you're in our VIP level, I want your completed step 1 portfolio, all 7, in the private review channel this week. All 7 templates. Jess and I will review your evidence, your scoring, your positioning hypothesis within 48 hours. And I'll tell you honestly whether the evidence supports your decision or whether you're seeing patterns that aren't really there. The system works when you work the right system. So start it tonight. So that's a wrap for this month's workshop. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the emojis. Thank you. I appreciate every one of you being here. I will trim down the ums and ahs and the stuttering over certain sections so that it reads faster. And I will then share the replay of this. But remember this, I failed so you don't have to. That's the core promise of this. And it starts with this decision, the niche decision. And this is the one most coaches skip or they rush through because it's uncomfortable, right? Validation interviews are uncomfortable. Specificity is supposed to feel uncomfortable. That discomfort, that's a signal that you're making a real decision instead of a safe one. So find your lane. Everything else gets easier. Everything else feeds into the next. And we'll see you next month. Go do the work. Take care.